we say?
Mhm.
I was in just down the road. I popped in because I was putting up posters, and I thought, well, I'll go into this doctor's office too for what I was working on. And sure enough, there's mom who, communicated more with her face. And there was daughter who would speak in mom's native language and then speak to just working on setting up the next appointment.
Mhm.
So Donna, what you do, my goodness. I mean, Slobodanka was saying that she came to the US with no English fluency, and in a situation where someone is aging. I mean, they are to the point where they are the mom or the grandma. They are the person who
Mhm.
um, is retiring or continuing to work into the years that
Mhm.
I'll say used to be retirement. And now it's like, I know these words, I've used these words, but I feel like no one can understand me. So I need to rely upon my, grandchild to speak for me. And I would imagine that someone would have to fight that feeling of um, they're just not confident in speaking this language, or not confident that they will be understood, not that they can't understand communication. It's not that. It isn't that they're not able in their brain to understand. But Donna, what you do is you work with people so that they know they're being understood. They can grow in their confidence of of how they form a word so that an American person can just, respond back. Do you have an example of something like that? You were saying at a medical facility, or
Well, I'm just thinking of my own English speaking
yes.
friends that have doctors that are from India or from someplace else, and they struggle to understand the doctors and the nurses because they're speaking English with their own native accent, with an accent. And so the Americans, we have less flexibility in our hearing to understand other accents than other second language speakers have. If you speak a second or a third language, your ears and your brain adapts more readily
Mhm.
to English than Americans who don't have that same experience have more difficulty understanding. And it takes anywhere from 15 to 20 people that work with a second language speaker. After a while, you adapt. You know, it takes maybe an hour or something to adapt to someone else's speaking, and you understand the majority of it
Mhm.
because it's in context rather than just specific words. But as an American and an English speaker, we typically get distracted by the accent and we're not paying attention to the message as much as we're getting distracted by the accent. And so our brain is like hijacked to not be able to understand. So a lot of it could be trained from English speakers to be able to recognize, to ask the speaker to slow down, to please repeat, to please clarify. There are things that I tell my clients that are second English speakers, second language speakers. Just, these are some things you can do to naturalize or to improve your communication efficiency
Mhm.
by being able to slow down. Make sure you say the last consonant sound of each word. Take your time, don't rush through. Because we tend to do that when we get anxious or nervous or we're scared. Think about it, even as a person going into a doctor, if I'm nervous about my own health concerns,
Mhm.
then it's really harder for me to retain what they're telling me.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so my father was elderly. He passed a few years ago at 95, but I used to go to the doctor's appointments with him and would record the appointment because even if I was taking notes, I might forget what that doctor said and he needs to hear it again.
Mhm.
And what I found was interesting is that they would try to talk to me instead of talking to him, where he was quite capable and quite, he was all there, but it was almost like he was no longer in the room. And I think there's a lot of age discrimination that comes through, especially in the medical field, that we get to be a certain age and they almost dismiss us like we're not capable or we're not important anymore. And that's extremely frustrating for somebody who's very viable at, 90, 92, 93. And even as I'm aging, I find that it's less, they see your age and they kind of like, you're like a second class citizen or something.
I find that very, very impactful. What I was going to talk about too is, substance use, as we see in the elder population, in our older population. We're seeing more and more of an increase in that. And when you were talking about body language, oftentimes there will be, a loved one that will be there with their mother, with their father, and their body language is quite different than their parent or their loved one. So I, as a provider, I use that. I take, I look at the body language while also respecting the primary patient, which is the person of age, right? So I'm really listening to them, responding to them, but I'm also paying attention to the body language when I ask someone, how much are you drinking a day? Are you using your medication appropriately? And the daughter is shaking her head, or, they're very concerned. So I take both information, and I think both of that can give you a really good picture of exactly what's going on, because a lot of times our patients are embarrassed to talk about how much maybe they're drinking, but they don't want to tell me that they're misusing their medication for fear of being taken off of their medication. And oftentimes I will preface by saying, I'm not the police. I'm here to take care of you. And I want to do that the best way that I can. And the only way that I can do that is to have the entire picture, so that I want them to feel as comfortable and as relaxed with me as possible to be able to give me that information. So I think it's interesting to hear all of the sides of it, but I try to take in the entire room. The energy can sometimes be frozen, when you ask that question, how much do you drink a day? And there's no, and silence, there's a lot to be said when there's not an answer right away, because most people can say, oh, I have a beer on the weekends, or I drink one or two drinks. But when there's not an answer, it's either they didn't understand the question or they don't want to give you the answer.
I have two gentlemen to greet. Philip, I'm so glad that you finished up the important thing that you were doing and still made it in here. Do you have to leave early? Do you have something coming up?
My days are always full, but I'm here to participate. So however we want to do that, I don't want to take precedent at all. You guys are in the flow. I want to flow in however I fit.
And I'm just thinking, boy, if he's like, I can be here for 10 minutes, I've got to get back, I wanted to make sure about that. Yay, Donna is having very good connection right now. And Donna, I am sure that Slobodanka was thinking, oh yes, I can relate to that, or I this is how I handle that situation, because here you are, a coach on how to be clearly understood, or to more clearly understand when two people have different accents. And here's Slobodanka. I did not plan this, but I love these collisions that happen in people's experiences right here on the screen. Are you okay? You're not a doctor, but you just got your master's degree.
Correct.
So, yes.
I have a broad experience. I'm a board certified CT technologist, and also have a master's in health administration. And I provide clinical evidence for our patients to provide diagnosis. So when Dr. Shelley said about connecting the whole history, that happens in my department too, because not everybody's open to share why they're here. because sometimes there is a language barrier, there is an embarrassment that they have had issues. They come with ETOX, which is drinking too much or using substance abuse. So it's very important for us to get on their level and sometimes put them in a private area to really answer those questions without feeling them being embarrassed. So it's very important to get on their level because not everybody speaks English. I had a trauma patient that did not speak English at all, and they were from Dominican Republic. So instead of using the actual translator, we used a good old Google translator to really ask why they were there and what we can provide at this time and what kind of diagnosis we can bring in based on their symptoms and to get them out there as soon as possible. So it's very important to communicate and get on their level to really ask questions because every story is different and everybody has different background. From most of what we see is low income and middle income families where there's no structure and actually education. And not everybody's health literate to share that with their care provider, with their a doctor or any other form of clinical force. So it's very important to understand and be respectful because not everybody is as healthy with mind, emotional, and physical aspect. So I know Dr. Shelley has seen that, and we are all advocates for better well-being and to really help them there. And that's why we're there.
Absolutely. Very well said.
Mm-hmm.
I have something I'd like to bring up. I was talking with a friend the other day, and she has a sister that's in hospice care right now. And she is not understanding her communication. And I forgot the name of this. When you replace one word with another. In other words, she says, she talks about my dog, she says horse.
Mm-hmm.
And so was asking her sister that she wanted to die. And the part was that she says, I don't understand if she really is just saying she's going to just check out, or if she's trying to, what. So she said it's the communication between her and the family members that's really a struggle because she feels like they need to have somebody in there to help almost translate. She's an English speaker, but help them really communicate and clarify what is it she's trying to say to them.
I would advocate for psychiatry to come into the room. Oftentimes, hospice, I don't think actually invites psychiatry in often. And that's a really important piece, not only for the family, but for the individual who is journeying into their next journey, right? I mean, they're transitioning, and that's full of fear, full of anxiety, pain. There's all sorts of things. And the medications that are prescribed during hospice can also create quite a lot of euphoria, delirium.
Yeah,
it makes a lot of individuals quite confused. So psychiatry can come into the room, and also anesthesiology. Anesthesiology, they're brilliant as far as pain medication, and all of that should be able to come in and be able to offer some advice as far as exactly what is going on with the patient and with the family.
Well, the confusion is this is the second time she's been in hospice care, and she's really too strong. In other words, her body is really healthy and strong. And so hospice care does not necessarily mean you're dying. It can be long-term care when you're still trying to heal. So there's some confusion of that. But it's, again, this idea of having relatives that are maybe not immediately in the same town or anything, but to be able to communicate in ways that can support this person, like be an advocate for this person. And so I was just saying, you're right. As far as being able to communicate, we've got what somebody was mentioning, HIPAA laws. So you can only give out so much information. But if you've got family members that want to keep up with doctor's appointments and what's being covered in these appointments and share that information with each other, what's available? What kind of app or support is available to be able to have a group of family that really want to know what's going on, but maybe different people are taking them to different appointments and don't know.
Another really good reason we should all have a living will.
Okay.
We should have advanced directives. We should have things set up in place for these type of situations, especially, so that we don't have to worry about the HIPAA, who can be in the room, who do we have to talk to.
Oh, okay.
Well, I don't think nowadays that they are really concerned about that. As long as the family member is present in the room or via phone call, they're really able to try to, it's a team effort. I think the healthcare system is moving toward more a team effort where they include everybody. And it's not just provider making decisions, it's a family and the patient itself, as long as they're mentally stable, to aid in that discussion. So it's it has changed for better.
It's a good point, and we talk about a lot of physicians, doctors, and nurses. I want to mention social workers and what an incredible clinicians they can be, and what a great advocate I have seen, and I have seen social workers be for individuals and families in times like this. So it's not always your doctors and nurses. There's multiple clinicians that can help out with families.
And I think the point to that is that,
I'm going to interject for just a second, because I said I had two gentlemen to introduce. Of course, I only did one, but there is another doctor in the house, and it is Michael Winters. And sure enough, my brain back here is going, sounds like dementia. Is there aphasia going on or aphasia? And he has anomic aphasia. And I was like, oh, thank you. Thanks, Michael. So I'm really grateful that he is chiming in and he's listening today.
Michael is a friend of mine, and I wanted to introduce him and Christine before, and we just now are getting around to it. So I saw them on New Year's and thought, Michael, you need to join this conversation or at least participate. So I'm glad to see he's here. Hi, Michael.
Hi.
I'm so glad. It's just good. And I know people are watching that cannot put something in the chat because they're driving. They're at something else that they need to attend to, but they're watching on a device or on a different platform. And so I won't see those. My husband, D. Scott Smith, motivational listener, will not be able to pop those onto the screen, but I'm thankful to everyone who's tuning in live right now. And I'll just say hi to everybody that's going to be tuning in years from now on Aging Better Network and going, that's what I'm experiencing. This is something I didn't even know to ask. And I thank you, each of you guests, for coming here today and sharing what you are. Slobodanka is actually going to share screen in a few moments. But Philip, you are on screen right now. And so why did we decide that you were going to come today? Is it I've had people say, so do you think I'm old? Is that why you're bringing me? Okay, before we start comparing numbers, how about if we just go, does anybody like longevity? Does anybody not plan on continuing to live into their future, which is tomorrow or next decade? And so why did I invite you?
That's a great question. I'm Philip. I'm surrounded by all these ladies that are doctors and all these beautiful letters behind their names. And I'm just a real estate guy, but I'm a real estate guy but I specialize in seniors, and I have for over 12 years now. Mom's House is a company that was designed to help when daughter Judy and the senior are making that transition from forever home into long-term care. And in a time when the family is usually getting a bunch of bad news in a row, mom fell down again, mom's going to be in rehab, mom can't move back home. The place we picked out is $7,500 a month. Where the heck's that money going to come from? We ask our affluent brother or sister to kick in for a little bit, and they'll say, sure, I'll kick in for a month or two, and then we need to sell. Say it with me, Mom's House. They'll say that. And so that act of needing to get that house ready for the market is very, very hard. This is their forever. I get to buy their forever home for a living, so I take great pride in helping these families in an industry that senior living needs help with conversion. And then the investor industry, I don't focus on either of those two. Those are pretty easy. I focus very much on daughter Judy and the journey of that family and the senior themselves. I deal with the family mainly. A lot of times one of the adult children lives over 400 miles away. And the thought of doing what the real estate agent has asked them to do, which is get the house retail ready so we can get top dollar. We all want top dollar. Donna wants it. Christine wants it. Dr. Shelley wants it. He wants it, right? We all want top dollar, but it's the journey to get to top dollar. And I'll give you an example of St. Louis. The average cost to redo a bathroom is $24,000. That's the cost to put a new bathroom in, to update a bathroom. The return you get back on that, or the value you get back, is around 11 or 12,000. So basically, that family loses half their money when they go to rehab the house. And so, at a time when a family needs money, the last thing that they really want to be doing is a rehab on the house, especially if they knew it's going to take 6 months, 8 months. You know, it takes probably a good 90 days just to clean the house out, and that's if you have help with the family. And so, and I'll give an example of St. Louis is that the average estate sale here generates between $3,000 and $5,000 in revenue, and the cost to put the sale on is between $3,000 and $5,000. And so, when people find out that mom's baby, Beanie Baby collection is not going to pay for her care, they're like, "Uh-oh, that didn't go the way we thought." And now after the clean out, now it's time to rehab to get that money. And it's a hard process. I've devoted my life to really senior living. I'm as much in senior living as I am in real estate. It's that journey of unlocking that equity for care. If I can give an analogy of why I'm here today, I think the senior living industry, long-term care industry, is kind of like if car dealerships, if they would stop buying the trade-in today, what would happen to that industry? They sell cars, then they don't buy the trade-in, and they'll say, "Hey, go figure out what you're going to do with that car. But please come back and buy our car. You really need our car. It's safer." And we're going to change that. What we're doing with Mom's House is we want to be the home trading guarantee for seniors when they move into senior living. And I think this conversation today is about aging, and so I'll get to the point. Everyone wants to age in place, and I believe that the boomers and their parents will do everything in their power to age in place, and that's okay with me. Even though I'm a guy that buys houses, right? I want them to age in place. But how they're going to tap their equity to have care in the house is going to change. And it won't be reverse mortgages, and it won't be second lines of credit. It's going to be something new called home equity agreements. And they're something we should all learn about. I think they're awesome and they're scary. And I think with anything in life, when you can tap equity or tap money without having to pay it back is the way they think, that can be a really good thing for families. And it can also be, in the future, confused or not understood very well. And I feel like that's where I'm I'm a real estate person, but I'm really in the senior living industry. So anything to do with seniors and that journey from their home into care, that's what I specialize in.
Thank you.
You say it right. Home equity agreement?
Home equity agreements.
Oh,
If you Google that right now, there's 4 or 5 companies. I won't name their names, but I'll just give an example. Let's say you have a $500,000 house and it's paid for. They would buy 20% of your equity for $100,000. So here's $100,000. You can just have it. You don't have to pay me back. There's no payment. But then they own 20% of your house. So when you go to sell it in the future, and hopefully the value in their mind, what have they bet on, guys? They've bet on the fact that $500,000 house today in 8 years will be worth $900,000, right? And so they're betting on the future. The hedge funds have gotten involved. I could argue both sides, and that's the scary part. I get that seniors want to stay in their houses as long as possible. And this will allow them to do that. So is that a good thing? This is where the doctors come in. This is where you ladies come in and say, sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's the unsafe thing, to empower them to stay where they're unsafe. I'll give you a really crazy stat. I read the other day that only 10% of houses that seniors live in are appropriate for them based on design.
Right.
10%. And like, just to take Boston, right? If you live in a 3-story house built in the 1890s, you basically can't rehab your way to what's called universal design. You just can't do it. And so seniors want to own houses, but they don't own the right houses. And only 10% of them are the right house. That's a scary stat.
Yeah.
Medically literate is something that was brought up a few minutes ago. And then in this short time, I've become way more real estate or home ownership literate because, Philip knows his stuff. Oh my goodness. Okay. Somebody comment on that. And then Slobodanka, would you be prepared to share screen on what you're doing today. Anybody want to say, hey, what about my house?
No, but I wanted to add, my father he had Parkinson's and could not move, and the house had steps. So I understand that sometimes people cannot financially modify the home. And if they do, Medicaid doesn't cover it.
Mm-mm.
So what are they supposed to do? So, based on the cost of the current long-term care, which goes from $3,500 to $7,500, depending if you need mechanical ventilation and stuff like that. A lot of people have no option but to stay in their home as long as possible.
I have a friend, Julie Lee, who actually has her startup business is about helping people do an assessment for their house and helping them find ways to age in place.
Mm-hmm.
So I've invited her. I want to introduce her to you, Christy. I think I'm trying to connect you two again as well.
That's helpful because a lot of people don't know which way to turn. Are they going to modify the home? Are they going to pay for that awful nursing home that really kills people?
That's right.
Or are they going to stay in the home? So as an example, when my dad was declining, I was the full-time caregiver while I was working my job, taking care of my family, and we kept him in a home until it was safe enough. Mm-hmm. And then we transitioned him into a hospice home, which was provided, services were provided by VNA, the Visitation Nurses Association, so they can come into that. It was a Catholic based on needs income facility, and which I recommend to most of my patients, especially the ones who are financially bound, to come and look into it and connect with the social worker and see how they can help them. And because everybody as they age are poor, and that's what I usually tell them, please do not, give your finances, because it's going to really destroy you when you try to look for nursing home, long-term care, hospice, anything. So it's best to prepare in advance and be financially and physically ready to make changes for your loved one.
I wish people would do that.
And they don't.
And they do not.
And until that happens, and I think that happened to us as a family, 3 siblings, mom, I had to step in and help my dad during the day so my mom can return to work.
I'll give you my personal feeling is that that generation, this older generation than us, I'll just say it that way, they didn't want to plan for this. But I feel like today's daughter, Judy, the people that have gone through this and they realize what their parents left them with to go through, we're probably a little more serious about our life planning, so we might not leave that same issues to our children, is how I look at it. So maybe we're growing as people and learning as people.
I think you're so funny that you're saying that. One thing I do want to make sure that when you're like Slabadaka, when you were talking about your father falling and declining, making sure we understand what is actually really going on. Are they falling because of the medical? Are they falling because it is increasing of substance use, drinking? Different things like that. So underline what's going on. But to your point, what we have incorporated is the death cleaning, to do with death cleaning, and how important that is, and my partner and I did that, and what a great feeling it was to be able to get rid of all this stuff. But it's like, why am I holding on to my daughter's 3rd grade papers that she's going to throw away? So do that death clean. It's so important for your children to get rid to alleviate them of that.
Mm-hmm.
We say
I threw away my children's teeth. I kept all their baby.
I didn't say, Christine, I didn't want to say that I had held on to the same thing, but it was papers and teeth. It was
interesting. Okay.
We say it lovingly that mom wasn't quite a hoarder. She was a bit of an aggressive collector.
Yeah.
I have all their artwork.
Throw it out.
All the artwork that they've done.
Chuck it. They're going to throw it out anyway.
But I've downscaled several times, and I realized when I moved out of the house that I'd lived in for 26 years, I'd gotten divorced and finally moved out of the house. And I thought they are going to be so grateful that I've cleared out all of this stuff. And then I have downscaled twice since then as well. People don't realize, but I used to live in a neighborhood. Well, I used to be one of these estate sale goers, and you go to these houses where they have the the what is it called? Not the dumpster, but it's even bigger than the dumpster outside, and the people are trying to clear out enough so that people can even get through the door to be able to look at the stuff because they're hoarders, and they didn't know that because they hadn't been in their family's home in a long time. And so I'm thinking, ooh, I do not want to be like this.
That's what I purchase. I buy those houses.
Oh my
Families
gosh.
usually say, we can't get in the front door, just buy it.
Yeah.
So
There were a lot of those in my older neighborhood because it was a lot of the original owners still lived in that neighborhood, and they'd been there for 50 years. Yep. And they were still there, small starter homes, but they were great little homes.
Sure.
Christine, thank you so much for having me. I do have to jump off. So it was a pleasure meeting all of you, and I'll make sure that we connect on LinkedIn.
Oh, you'll come back. You'll come back. You have so much more. Oh my goodness. Oh, Shelley. Thank you. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Y'all too. Thank you.
Happy New Year.
You too.
So about 3 years ago, my ex-husband passed away, and I went and got my Neptune card and paid for my cremation plan, and my box is in the top of my closet. Mm-hmm. So I just figured I'm not going to put my kids through whatever those plans are, but now it is to set aside what it is I want, because they don't really know my friends and my family. They don't live in the same town. So a lot of that is just left to the hopes of, if they may be blood relatives, but it doesn't necessarily mean they've had a very active part in how I want the rest of, that transition to go for me. So it just makes sense about finding the medical. I mean, we need a list. We need a checklist of these things. Christine, do you have a checklist for us?
I have a book. Did you plan this? I have a book. So this is the 52 aspects of aging, and it encourages you to literally write down and to contact a person that maybe they're younger than you are, but definitely you're practicing communicating. So you're writing down things that are not going to be an issue to you. It's like, yes, I collected those, fill in the blank, baseball cards, teacups, Cadillacs out in the field. It's a non-issue. I don't care what you do with them if I start to show signs of dementia. It is the most important thing to me. Don't move anything, or, hey, here's your opportunity to say, instead of doing this, would you please contact a professional and make sure that these go into an auction or what, so that's what I have is Pre-Actor Age Prompted Journal, hitting all the things that I got to see when I was the caregiver that was hired to go into the home, and the family was about me. And sometimes I was there for years. And so I was just, seeing commonalities from home to home going, everybody's going through that, and wow, look at the way that they've handled it, because they're communicating, because they sat down and said, this is a hard topic. Let's battle our way through. And this is a way to just go, it's here, honey. And for solo agers to choose people, choose 13 people, give each of those 13 people 4 of your preferences, your what ifs, and then you get to practice through, how can I handle this better so that I'm not just hoarding, but I'm realizing, oh, I can give something in a way that's meaningful to me, and I want to give it geographically far away so that I never see what really happens to it. I can just imagine, it's being treasured just like I always whatever it is. So Slobodonka, I said that you were going to share screen. Is that
I wanted, since I'm a professional in the medical field, I wanted to share what our department, imaging department, does when how patients are diagnosed with dementia, because everybody comes to a hospital and needs a CAT scan. So I wanted to share some slides. I don't know if I'm supposed to slide through, or is that Scott?
Why don't you try, and then we'll see if that works.
So my topic is unveiling the mind, the role of CT imaging in diagnosing dementia and how our imaging services come to hand. First, I'm going to cover a little bit of understanding dementia. And I never knew that dementia is also known as a major neurocognitive disorder. It's an umbrella term that encompassing conditions arising from neurodegeneration. So you can read that, how it impacts on cognition, functional impairment, and the causes. And when I pulled up the WHO, or the World Health Organization, over 55 million affected worldwide with dementia, which is alarming. And it's good to know so we can plan accordingly and in advance, as everybody says, where your Donna, your services, and Philip and everybody else can aid transitioning from the hospital to the home. And it causes dementia, causes an enormous economic burden, almost about 1 trillion, and 50% of that is attributed to actual caregivers like myself that I was, and informal caregivers, which are usually not paid. They take about 5 hours of care per day to aid in their family's daily living, medication, making appointments, transitioning plans and stuff like that. And it's dementia, is, if you did not know, is the 7th leading cause of death, and affects almost anybody aged 37 to 73. But what we have been seeing is about 62 and up for women and 65 and up for men. And when we transition to the next slide, is there's many common forms of dementia. Alzheimer's is the most common, 60 to 70% of cases. Vascular dementia, about 17 to 30% of cases. And it occurs basically due to small blood vessels, which are caused after a stroke, a TIA of any of those. Mixed dementia, and then frontotemporal dementia, Parkinson's. And the most common, that we see is PSP, or progressive supranuclear palsy, which is a form of Parkinson's, but more aggressive. And if I did not mention, my mother-in-law, late mother-in-law, passed away from PSP. And I have many other friends who are affected today by that very common destructive disease. And not to go into the 8 warning signs of dementia: decline in movement and motor control, olfactory, auditory, and tactile hallucinations, which we have touched upon, poor regulated bodily function, sweating, pulse, blood pressure, and digestion, where a lot of patients present with actual constipation, sleep complications, difficulty with attention span, problems with cognition or out of sync, and apathy. And that's what we look on images, and atrophy, which will be covered, and then depression. And how we do early detection and medical imaging for dementia, we always advise for your family member to contact your provider, and they'll perform a thorough medical examination to assess the situation. And the provider may recommend a CT brain non-contrast scan, which usually takes less than 5 minutes. And everybody had a brain scan, probably all of you, at some point in your life. And as in imaging, we're always concerned about low dose, which is as low as reasonable and achievable. So what we do is, when we schedule an appointment for your CAT scan, it is very prevalent, the CAT scan, in diagnosing dementia, and it can also rule out any other conditions, and it can reveal structural brain changes and diseases and Alzheimer's. So the CT imaging procedure is, as you know, the technologist will position you into the gantry depending on the body that we are imaging. And we obtain for the brain, about 30 to 35 axial images or slices of your brain at different intervals or slice thickness, depending on the doctor's preference, what they see in the brain. And what we can see is the radiologist or doctors who specialize in radiographic images look for atrophy, which is the brain shrinks and blood vessel changes. And as you say, when we look at the photo I provided with the Alzheimer's disease, to the left is hippocampus, which is very significant and shrinks in the Alzheimer's patients. Vascular dementia, when people had strokes, they look for stroke evidence. Frontotemporal, which is the front of your brain, atrophy in the frontal parts and temporal parts of your brain. And then Lewy body dementia. Probably I haven't heard that before, but it was nice to learn about that. And when we here recommend CT and PET scan images, which reveal dopamine producing area changes in your brain. What do you think? It's a lot of that technologists when you go behind the scenes, what we do and what we specialize in. So as healthcare is evolving, we have really invested a lot of hospitals with the artificial intelligence capable investments and informatics, which come handy for our technologists and our physicians to actually read those images, because it's all about speed and diagnosis and starting the treatment plan for your loved one. So what we have I work for Cleveland Clinic and Southwest General, which are local Cleveland, Ohio organizations. And what we have done is we acquired CT scanners with AI-enabled cameras. When you walk into the suite, you see a big camera on top, which helps us aid actually positioning the patient and getting the speed of exam and the testing done as soon as possible. And we also utilize, as you see here, we have touchscreen iPads where we can input. So if you ever, when you go get your CAT scan, you can pay attention to what we are doing. We actually here selecting the patient's information, scan type, so we can get that trauma patient in and out as soon as possible, or somebody with the stroke symptoms. And its time is of essence in imaging, so it's very important. And then we have invested in some cutting edge reconstruction technology. I know a lot of new information, which I'm always educating my patients upon on any subject when it comes to imaging world, because it's evolves and it's form of art.
Well, I guess,
go ahead.
No, I was just saying this is great that we've got this technology, but what I'm more interested in is what can I do to prevent having this happen? And after watching the Blue Zones on PBS and finding out, it has to do with our staying mobile, staying healthy, mindset, staying engaged,
less stress.
There's a lot of things we can do to slow that, to not have to have these things happen. But when we're sitting in front of the television all the time, or we're not getting out, or we're so isolated, I think that becomes part of the problem. I met a young woman on New Year's, and she was saying that there was a report in Houston, I'm from Houston, that 1/2 of the people living in Houston are living solo, living by themselves. And so when you think about the generations that are now living on their own, or isolated, or don't have a large family network or friendship, it makes a lot of difference. I think the impacts start even younger. We've got depression and we've got some of these other things, and they're not taking care of themselves. So part of this is that some of us, fortunately, my father was 95 when he passed, and he was still doing very well. And, I consider that I've got a long time ahead of me, and I want to do everything I can to stay healthy now.
I know I met a vibrant 95-year-old who was surrounded in an emergency room with her 3 friends, and she lived in a like a seniors living center, and she said she thrived from having fun with her girlfriends who were 93, 95. They did not have walkers, and they really had decreased level of dementia because they were involved in their community. A lot of people don't. So that's why it's important to stay engaged and active, see the world, travel. I have had a friend who just passed at 102, and she was a worldwide traveler, never had dementia, just died of old age. So it's very important to stay active, have less stress. drink less alcohol and engage in some not so appropriate activities.
Or completely appropriate, depending on your perspective, I guess.
Depending, yeah. Sometimes, I'm Eastern European. We take a shot of Schneevo just to help with the ailments, fever, and all other old wives.
Donna, you had talked about the Blue Zones documentary. One of the things in there that I took away and something that I've been addicted to lately is something called pickleball.
Oh,
and
yes.
What I noticed about pickleball is it's not only any racket sport is phenomenal. They talk about the back of the brain. There's about 10% back there that's based on your equilibrium. And so people that play racket sports are way less likely, this is what studies are showing, to have dementia in the future, to keep that part of the brain engaged. I also can't think of a sport where you could pay me to run sprints, but I basically run sprints the whole time. And one of the best attributes, Ms. Key talked about the 95 and the 93-year-old ladies, they had each other. And I think one of the biggest things about pickleball, more than any other sport, is how social it really is. And so I think what we're talking about here is that isolation. All those people that live in Houston by themselves, they need to go find something like pickleball or something that they can go out and be around other people. I think the isolation is a killer, and there's some fun things out there. So finding things that you enjoy and also can bring you fellowship are very important.
Donna, you reminded me that I went to see a movie that was brought to our community because we were going for AARP. We've only lived here for a year and a half, but AARP designation as an age-friendly community. In came this movie. I sat with these wonderful people who frequent the senior community center. And at the end, we were all sharing a blanket in the back row because it was a little bit cold in the theater. And one of them just spoke out and said, "Well, now I'm scared." Because the movie was about dementia, what's being done, what's being discovered, etc. And so there was an amount of information that came. And I could imagine these gals going, "What do I do to make sure that I don't get to that point? Or will there be someone there for me?" They have each other. Yay. I don't know their living situations, but I know they have each other. The community center is open 5 days a week. And I just thought, so take in information that reduces fear because you've got something to hang on to. But there is that point where you're just like, almost, like, wow, you're telling me all this stuff, and what in the world, fronto tempo Louis body, what can I do? And so now we know there's pickleball, there's being active, but I'm going to throw in, and it can't just be the same activity day after day in a routine that becomes a rut. It literally has to be something that you're adjusting to, physically adjusting to, using your brain a different way, the same time that you're doing something else, talking while you're walking, not just walking alone, looking at the sidewalk. There's just a lot of things that it's variety. It's having to adapt. It's experiencing something and then communicating with someone else about it, or putting it into your art. That is going to keep making connections up there. Because if you just think all I have to do is my 3, 4, 5 things, even the people that I assisted said, "You know what? Doing a crossword puzzle is easy for me because they kind of stick in the same words all the time. I do the same crossword puzzles from the same newspaper. I just, it's same. And the plasticity, I don't know. I'm saying a bunch of words that Slobodanka knows better. But yes, doing something that's out of your zone causes you to build something new up here. Not as many children in school and people in college are getting dementia because they're just building and having new I don't know what it would be like if you just had the same thing all the time. Well, yes, I do. But anyway, we are at a point where it is a great idea for me to ask my husband, who is producing this show, to put Dr. Shelley Halligan's LinkedIn that she shared with us in the comments, to put that up. So in her stead, I am saying, get a hold of Shelley Halligan on LinkedIn. It's just one dash between her first name and her last name. It's 2 L's and 2 E's in that Shelley. She's got so much. She is definitely coming back in. I will just keep pulling the rope until she's back in. Who knows? Maybe she will show up again with our commenter, our chat columnist, Michael Winters, who's a PhD. Maybe they can get together because she's got several other things to share about as well. I will start with Slobodonka and ask you to tell us if there's any links, if there's any ways to contact you, if there's anything that you want to share, because you've been through it with your family members. You have, with at least 3 of your family members, that moment where you're just going, diagnosis, what do we do? And here you are, a professional in diagnostics, but how do you want to be remembered? What are your links that you want us to know about? And is there something that you want to recommend to us?
Well, usually whenever you're faced in the emergency room with those new diagnoses, it's always a good start. And when we provide services is to provide care collaboration to connect you with the social worker, with the caregiving office, with the nurses who can connect all of those services, because not everything is open at midnight when you come in, and we want to provide you with as much as resources as possible to give you hope so you don't feel alone when you step out of the hospital. Because all of that, as I said, my son was diagnosed with autism at age 18 months. So when that happened, they gave me a book. And I stood in the parking lot and didn't know which way to turn. So I had to navigate by myself without any help of healthcare provider back in the day to find resources, to find appropriate school, education. How does the insurance cover anything? It does not, even with the public, with the private insurance through the hospital. But always talk to your provider. And that will be the greatest resource you can have, from nurses, from technologists, from anybody in the emergency room or a hospital, to aid you to find respite care, to find adult daycare centers so your family member can go into adult daycare center so you can get some respite, hospice areas, institutions which are free of service, free of charge, which is very important nowadays because a lot of people are financially stranded to provide, to put a patient, to their family member in a nursing home. So the easiest way to contact me is via LinkedIn. I do not provide any private services because I provide in the hospital, and that's where I provide clinical contact, marketing strategies for my radiologists so they can actually provide diagnosis for your loved one.
Slobo, do you have a geriatrics doctor's department in your clinic?
I work in emergency room. So at night, we usually then provide, our emergency room doctor will provide care collaboration with that physician, or psychiatry, as Dr. Shelley, mentioned, or care management office in the morning, so we can connect your family member with the necessary services. And for example, I have had a patient who was diagnosed with brain cancer and it was really declining. And I had a poor wife there pouring her eyes out, didn't know which way to turn. So what did I do? I gave her information on the cancer, on Seidman Cancer Center, who to contact, respite care, central scheduling to make all the appointments in the morning that were necessary, because nobody's going to call her from the doctor's office. You have to be on your advocate to start that process. So I always advise, talk to your emergency room team or your nurse, and they'll provide you with all the necessary informations and steps where to go next, because every story and every case is different.
And I think that's the concern of a lot of people is a lot of us are single women, more single women I know as friends that don't have children or don't have partners or anything. And so having to really work together to create our own little network to support each other, because it does get to be concerning and it's less and less available.
Yeah,
now, we have to be our own advocates while we still can,
and have that power of attorney. Because what if you're incapacitated? You just had a heart attack. We have to try to resuscitate you. Who's going to, provide the critical information so you don't end up being Jane Doe? So
have a living will or
yes,
whatever.
all of that. Yes,
you want,
because we heavily rely on that information, especially if somebody's coming from an MVA or a car accident, and so it's. Go ahead, Christine.
Donna. How do you want people to connect with you?
I have a website, clearenglishcoach.com, or on LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn at Donna Durbin. They can find me there. I would love to connect with people if they want to, if they need any help with their accent naturalization, actually, and naturalizing your American English accent, or just, I've got a wide group of friends, and I'm trying to pass the word with this. I'd like to know how they find this live stream again, because will this replay? Will this be on your YouTube channel? How will
Aging?
find the replay?
Yes. Aging Better Network. You can just say ABN, agingbetternetwork.com/live. And they can scroll through in a couple of days. This picture that we're seeing right now on our screens will render. Sometimes I look like I'm about to sneeze, but we try to make everyone else look good. Because you only get you get 3 to choose from. And there they can scroll down and find you. They see your names on the screen. I'm really glad that you said that. How can your friends find this again? It will be there, posted on this date, and they can see your face and go, found her.
Can you do this every Wednesday?
Every
Wednesday, it's a live stream with different guests, different speakers.
Sometimes it was previously recorded. Usually it's live. So depending on whether I'm available or near good connections that day, but most of the time it is just brand spanking live. Whatever happens. Slobodanka, your cat didn't go through.
I don't know where he is. He's we had recently adopted a little small gray tabby from local APL, and he loves being in my home office. So you'll see the tail coming through and him climbing.
Right. They just you really like that screen, but it's about me right now. So the dog and cat at my place are tucked away. They will be released in moments. Philip, I don't know if you do what you do from remotely, like Donna can talk to Kenya remotely and work with a person. What about you? How do you want to be contacted, and what would they be finding out from you?
Sure. So over the past 3 years, I've been building a nationwide network of people that do what I do. I've trained over 2,000 people to be senior transition specialists. So I have a national network. And so momshouse.com, the more I peel the layers back of the onion of this industry, I realize how there's so much awareness problems. There's there's so many great things out there for us, and we're just not aware of them. And I feel like daughter Judy is on an island all the time. Every daughter Judy I meet feels like they're on an island. And it's been the same for the past 13 years now. And I feel like we're in an information world and it's there. And sometimes they don't even know what questions to ask. They don't even know that these things are available, like Miss Key talked about, right? And so, and I think my service, is something different, and that's okay. I like change in the world, and I think I go in programs like this because I want to spread awareness that families have more options, and there's no one answer for any family or one house or one thing, or should they age in place or should they move. Guys, it's way too big. We're talking about basically 70 million Americans, right? But they do have options, and boomers and their parents, this silver tsunami that's happening for the next 15 years, there's going to be more and more awareness about caregiving. Thank goodness we need more caregivers, about how we can help them. I think things like this were on the forefront of being able to have more awareness of these families so they can suffer. It's going to be hard no matter what, right? We know that, but can we make it a little better each day? And I think we're doing those things by being. So you want to get a hold of me, momshouse.com. That's the easiest way to find me. And I'm all over social media, and so you guys can find us there.
Okay.
Oh, this has been great and amazing. And
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful. Go forth and be amazing as you always are, people. And thank you so much for being part of getting words out that people are going, I needed that. It's like, now you got it. Pass it along to someone else who's going to need it. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful Wednesday. Happy 2024.
Thanks, Christine. Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Slow Bob. Bye, Philip.